I lost everything just to keep a promise, but did the promise really matter anymore? The silence of this cramped apartment is the answer to the question I ask myself every single morning: did I make a mistake? I'm Julian, 37, and 5 years ago, I had a life that was about to explode into brilliance. Now, I have nothing but a quiet, crushing certainty that I honored a promise that didn't matter anymore, and in doing so, I lost everything that did. My life was meant to be different. I was 32, a gifted architect on the verge of signing a deal that would define my career, the lead design on the Athelred Tower, a massive, landmark skyscraper in the city center. This project was my masterpiece, the culmination of 15 years of relentless work, and the contract was worth millions. It was the moment I stopped being an emerging talent and became a definitive name. But the cornerstone of my life wasn't architecture, it was my father, Arthur. He was 75, an artist, a man whose hands were always stained with paint, and whose heart was too big for his frail body. My mother had passed years ago, and it was just the two of us. He was the only person who truly believed in my wild, sprawling designs, the one who taught me that the foundation of a building is trust. The promise I'm talking about was made 15 years earlier, when I was fresh out of school. Arthur had been battling an early, terrifying bout of heart trouble. Lying in the hospital bed, weak but lucid, he made me swear an oath, a morbidly specific request. He had spent his life pouring his soul into his paintings, and he believed one piece, a vast, abstract canvas called the Unmade Landscape, held his purest artistic truth. He made me swear that when he passed, I would personally see to the destruction of that single canvas. His reasoning was complex. He believed true artistic freedom meant not leaving behind a legacy, but ensuring that his most powerful work, the work he felt most accurately captured his soul, could never be monetized, critiqued, or owned by a world he felt only appreciated surface value. It was an act of final, beautiful rebellion. I, young and emotionally vulnerable, swore on my future that I would honor his wishes. I sealed it with a kiss on his frail hand. I never thought twice about it. The moment of contradiction. The years passed. Arthur recovered, the threat receded, and the promise became a dusty artifact of intense emotion, tucked away in the back of my mind. I worked. I built my career, and the Athelred Tower contract finally materialized. It was everything. Then, 5 years ago, the doctors gave us the news. This time, there was no recovery. Arthur's heart was failing, and we had 6 months, maybe less. My father was at peace. He asked me, with a quiet solemnity that shook me to the core, if I remembered the promise. I told him, through tears, that I did. But here is where the tragedy began. While my career was skyrocketing, Arthur's art had quietly, unexpectedly, exploded in value. A major European gallery had featured the Unmade Landscape in a retrospective. Critics had hailed it as his masterpiece, a vital piece of post-war abstract expressionism. The world had finally, completely, understood the truth he poured onto that canvas. The art world was now in a frenzy. A consortium of museums and private collectors were clamoring for the painting, recognizing its cultural significance. The valuation, confirmed by the estate lawyer, was $15 million. Not just money, but enough capital to fully fund a massive, self-sustaining foundation dedicated to emerging, uncommercialized artists, the very artists Arthur secretly championed. Arthur died 3 weeks later, quietly, in his sleep. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the massive, textured canvas. On one hand, I had a solemn, sacred, 15-year-old promise to my dying father: destroy it. Let its truth die with me. On the other hand, I had $15 million, a fortune that wasn't just money, but a tool that could change hundreds of lives, funding the very artistic freedom Arthur claimed to value. What would you do? Honor a sacred promise made in an emotional moment, knowing it would destroy a culturally significant masterpiece and $15 million in charitable potential? Or break the promise, fulfill the painting's value, and betray the final wish of the man you loved most? I called the estate lawyer and the gallery curator. They argued with me for hours. They spoke of history, culture, and the massive charitable good the sale would do. They practically begged me not to destroy the painting, saying Arthur, the artist, would have understood the greater good. But I kept hearing his frail voice, the final plea of a man who cherished integrity over all else. I knew my father. He might have been wrong about the world's appreciation of his art, but his intent in that promise was pure. He wanted control over his legacy. Breaking that promise, even for good, felt like a fundamental betrayal of the man who taught me how to live. If I couldn't honor my foundation of trust, how could I build a life? I told the lawyer the estate was not to be sold. I instructed them to arrange the documentation. A week later, in the presence of the lawyer and 2 witnesses, I carried the Unmade Landscape outside. It was a clear, sunny afternoon, a grotesque contrast to the cold horror of the act. I remember the weight of the canvas, the rich texture of the paint, the smell of linseed oil. It felt like holding the body of a friend. I took a sharp utility knife, the same kind I used to cut architectural models, and I began the work. I ran the blade across the canvas, feeling the sickening shred of the material, the snap of the strained fibers. It wasn't quick, it was deliberate, tearing the masterpiece into irreparable, worthless strips. It took me 30 minutes. I destroyed $15 million in wealth and charitable potential with my own 2 hands, all to honor a promise made a decade and a half earlier. The destruction of the painting didn't just eliminate the money, it set off a chain reaction that destroyed my professional life. The controversy was immediate and viral. The media portrayed me as an unstable, spoiled maniac who destroyed a piece of cultural history out of spite. The art world was furious. My public reputation, once pristine, was shredded. The Athelred Tower project depended heavily on the public goodwill of my name and my firm. My lead investor, a major cultural patron, dropped me immediately, citing irreparable reputation damage and the inability to trust someone who valued personal whims over public good. They didn't care about the promise, they saw only the lunatic who tore up $15 million. I lost the Athelred contract. I lost my investors. My firm dissolved. I lost my career, not because I was a bad architect, but because I was perceived as an unstable person of questionable judgment. I became a pariah overnight, the architect who destroyed a masterpiece. I am 37 now, and for 5 years, I've been living in this cramped, borrowed space, taking on minor, anonymous drafting jobs just to pay the rent. I look at the wreckage of my career and my life, and I hold tight to the one thing I retained, my integrity. If you lost everything you had, everything you worked for, just to keep an intensely personal promise to a loved one, would the resulting loneliness and failure eventually make you regret the ethical high ground? I kept my promise. Arthur's final wish was granted. The beautiful, dangerous piece of art was never judged or possessed by the world. But now, alone in the silence, I look at the wreckage of my life and I ask the question that haunts me, did the promise really matter anymore? Would Arthur, having seen the charitable good the money could do, have forgiven me for breaking the oath? I sacrificed everything, and I am left with nothing but the quiet terror that I made the wrong choice. The foundation of trust is all I have left, but it stands on a desolate, ruined landscape. Do you think honoring a promise made years ago takes precedence over the tangible good that breaking it could have achieved? Let me know your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.